This is the subject of a lot of folks' anxiety and discomfort of like, how do I do this? Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming back if you've been here before, or hi, welcome if you're new. My name is Vicky, I'm a therapist, and we talk about therapy things on this channel. And today we are doing a part 2 to a video that I already made. I will put that up here in case you haven't watched it, but we are talking about how to make friends today. Part 1 was more so of the like, where actually do I find friends? Where can one meet new people? And this is going to be more about the practical how-to of like, how exactly does one go about making new friends, and what are the best practices in terms of strategies and behavior. So we are talking about that today. Before we dive into it, I said this in the last video and I'm going to say it again. I want to encourage everybody to unlearn the mean ass things that we say to ourselves about needing to find new friends, being embarrassing or being shameful, being a sign that you suck at relationships or friendships. That's not true, especially in a like post-2020 world. It has been a lot more difficult for folks to be out of their houses regularly, to be running into new people. And I think especially too, as we as a collective are continuing to do work on ourselves, we are continuing to raise the bar on like the type of friends that we want to have. So it's very normal to have to find new people, to need to like develop new community, especially when we're developing new community that's more reflective of our values, of our like continued evolution of ourselves. So be nice to yourselves about it. Along with that, I can assure you that in the same way that you are looking for friends, so the fuck is everybody else. I know that we feel very isolated in this, but I can assure you the reason I'm making this video, first of all, is because I get a lot of comments about it, but second of all, because this is very much work that I have done as a therapist. So I can promise you that there are lots of other people who are looking for new friends and probably looking for a friend just like you. With that, let's get into the tips. Okay, the first piece of advice for you that I have is to stop trying to be so fucking cool. I really want to encourage people generally, but especially in regards to this issue, to unlearn this idea that it's cool and secure and self-actualized to appear unbothered and disinterested in the world around us. I think this is a very common, this is a very common defense mechanism that a lot of us use when we feel kind of out of our comfort zone. We do this thing where we pretend to not know people's names or not remember people or to not be interested in talking to other people. And this is the number one barrier that gets in people's way because we feel insecure, because trying to make new friends is inherently vulnerable. We might do this where we appear sort of like, no, it's fine, I don't need to make new friends. And this doesn't send the clear message to the people around you that we talked about in part 1, that you are actually trying to make new friends. So along with this, I want to encourage people to be brave and be clear that like, yeah, I started taking this pottery class because I really like pottery, but also because I'm trying to make new friends, right? That's not desperate. That's not embarrassing. It's not a shameful thing to admit. It is true. And also this allows you to be clear with the folks around you that you are actually in fact trying to make friends. Anybody else who is in the vicinity who hears that is going to be like, oh, that's interesting, right? That's cool. I want to go talk to that person. And anybody who is not interested in making new friends is going to know that, be aware of that, and then therefore not waste your fucking time in talking to you and occupying all of your social battery when they're ultimately not interested in advancing their relationship with you beyond this interaction. So first of all, it's important to unlearn because the truth about being secure and being confident is that it's not embarrassing to be clear about our feelings and our wants and needs. The actual flex here is in being able to successfully admit that like, yes, I'm trying to make new friends and I don't find that embarrassing. And also because this is actually a very useful strategy in being clear with the folks around you that you do in fact want to make friends. As a quick caveat to this though, one important truth about being clear that you want to make friends and unlearning this attitude of like unbothered coolness is that it will mean that you get rejected. This is painful. This is difficult. I do very much want to validate that as a person who's like very sensitive to rejection. I very much feel that, and you are allowed to feel how you feel. And also I want to encourage you to remember that in the pursuit of making new friends, we will sometimes get rejected, and that's not a reflection of you. It's not a reflection of your worthiness or your value. It just simply is a thing that happens sometimes, and you can survive that. You can move through that. You are allowed to feel real bad and to need some space to process that, and then still continue to make the active choice to be brave and to put yourself outside of your comfort zone because it's worth it. So also be nice to yourself in that regard. Also, while I'm reading my notes real quick, in case you didn't know, we do a podcast episode every Thursday, and then we stream every Friday. So if you want to see more content from me, that's a great place to do it, and I would love to see you there. So tip number 2 is to not not U-Haul your new friends. For those of you who don't know, U-Hauling is a term that the queer community often uses, usually as a joke, to reflect the desire oftentimes to like fast track a relationship, right? The joke being sort of that like by your third date, you've rented a U-Haul to move in together. And I want to encourage people to not do this with your friends. It is so incredibly very human to want to get past the initial awkward phase of trying to get to know someone and just like already be friends, right? But first of all, this is difficult because it can cause you to develop relationships that are not actually very safe for you. It can cause you to ignore what are very important to acknowledge red flags or incompatibilities. But it can also come across as kind of disarming to the folks that you're trying to make friends with, right? There is an era or an aura of like desperation and like a fervence with which this energy can sometimes come along. And that can be not the funnest to be on the receiving end of. In the same way that I want to encourage you to be clear and vulnerable and brave in saying that like, yes, I am trying to make friends. I also want to encourage you to exercise some self-restraint here in honoring that the folks who are good compatibilities for you, the folks who are meant to be your friends, will be people that you can safely, slowly, securely develop that relationship with over time. You don't have to rush it in order to avoid like missing out on that friend, right? I guess all of that to say that the folks who are good, safe, happy, dependable, securely attached friends will be there along this journey of like slowly, carefully developing that trust and relationship over time. Number 3 is something that I touched on at the beginning of the video, which is that we need to unlearn the mean ass shit that we say to ourselves around making friends. It is so incredibly common for folks in the journey of trying to make friends that we will tell ourselves these really hateful and hurtful things that oftentimes are more reflective of our own trauma history, of our own insecurities, rather than they are reflective of objective reality, right? I want to be clear, this is very human. Again, nothing to be ashamed of, but still important to be aware of, because if somebody tells you, no, I cannot meet up for coffee today because I'm busy, and we tell ourselves, fuck, this person hates me, this person's avoiding me, they never want to fucking hang out with me, they might actually just be busy though, right? And so being aware of our inner dialogue and being able to sit with that feeling to validate that like, this is probably a rejection trauma for me. This is probably like pushing some of my buttons that don't have anything to do with that person. So I need to step back from this, show myself some compassion, address whatever inner parts of me need addressing right now, and then survey this interaction with a more level set expectation in a minute. Again, I want to be clear. Sometimes folks do this, right? Especially if you are neurodivergent and have a hard time reading context and like subtext in relationships. It is important to be aware that if somebody never says yes to you, they might be trying to avoid you, right? However, if somebody says no to you one time and we tell ourselves they hate me, that might be more reflective of our own inner wounds than it is that person's actual real feelings about the relationship. When we do this to ourselves, where we say this person is avoiding me or they hate me or they don't want to hang out with me, and so therefore I'm never going to reach out to them again, this can be a thing that gets in our way of making friendships, right? Again, the universal truth of being in relationships generally is that sometimes we're going to get rebuffed, right? Sometimes someone might say no to you because they're genuinely busy, because their social battery is low, because maybe they are not in the mood to hang out with you. All of those are valid reasons to say no, and none of those have to mean that you should run away from that relationship or that person and never pursue it again. Real, healthy, happy, securely attached friendships look like being able to walk through that rejection and those rebuffs while also honoring that someone is allowed to set boundaries for themselves and we can still maintain a healthy, happy friendship. Along with the unlearning, I want to encourage folks to remember that not all of the new friends that you make are going to be your like platonic soulmate, ride or die best friends. Oftentimes we go into the journey of trying to make new friends with the hope that we will find like our people, right? And this is, again, super valid. This makes a lot of sense. I think for a lot of people, this is the logical goal of trying to make new friends. However, in the same way that we want to be unlearning the mean things that we say to ourselves about ourselves and our identities and our insecurities, we also want to be unlearning this idea that friends are only worth having if they are your platonic soulmate best friends, right? The truth is that for a lot of people with a like well fleshed out social circle, we will have friends that are more like the acquaintance people, the people that we like see for happy hour, that we like, maybe talk to in a group setting, but they're not our like, one-on-one friends. And that is still part of having a healthy and happy community of like support and social interaction, right? We as human beings are not intended to only have like one person that we confide in forever, for all of time, and that's it. There is a lot of value in having friends that are sometimes more situationally based. Maybe there are friends that we like hang out to play D&D with, and that's the extent of our relationship, but we have other friends that we meet with to talk about our relationships or our childhood stuff, or friends that have particular interests, etc., etc. You get it. The point that I'm making is that friendship, generally speaking, is a valuable thing. It is something that's important and adds a lot of like goodness to your life. And so I want to encourage you to let go of this like fervence that oftentimes, again, folks pursue friendship with, because the truth is that friends, even if they are more surface level, more tertiary, are still valuable to have in your life. And also, having tertiary friends doesn't mean that you're never going to find your platonic soulmate people. You might find them along the way through other means, but maintaining these more surface level relationships, again, still is adding a positive value to your life, and it's still worth pursuing. As an aside, for what it's worth, this can also add a lot of pressure into the process of trying to meet new friends, where we tell ourselves, is this my person? Is this my core group of people? And that can feel very overwhelming to try to discern that really quickly. And this can also narrow the field of searching quite a bit, right? Like this is very similar to online dating or like dating generally, really. If you tell yourself, I am only engaging past a first date with somebody that I could see being a soulmate or somebody that I could marry, we're narrowing the pool quite significantly, right? The truth is that you might go on a couple of dates or date someone for a few months before you realize that they're not your soulmate person, and that's okay, right? That wasn't wasted time. That wasn't time that you like wasted for yourself or for someone else. It was just time that you spent trying to discern whether this person is a soulmate person or not. If we tell ourselves that I am only pursuing interactions with people who could be my soulmate best friends, then you might be pursuing interactions with like very, very few people, which again is narrowing the odds that you're going to develop friends generally. And that's like, typically speaking, not what we want to be doing in this pursuit. The last two tips that I have for you are more practical interpersonal tips. First and foremost, give people an out. When we talk about like engaging in conversation, this is the subject of a lot of folks' anxiety and discomfort of like, how do I do this, right? And so I wanted to include some of these tips because I know people have questions about it. Giving folks an out when you invite them to stuff can go a long way in those interactions being a lot more successful and a lot less stressful to navigate for you and for the other person. For example, texting someone cold out of the blue and saying, what are you doing on Wednesday? Is very different than texting someone and saying, hey, I have some free time after work on Wednesday, so I'd love to get drinks if you're free. If not, I'll catch you next time. Hope you're doing well. The feeling that someone's going to have in receiving those two messages is very, very different, and I want to encourage people to keep this in mind, right? Again, we don't want to be channeling the like unbothered, I don't give a shit about you energy, because that's not helpful, but acknowledging that folks do have lives and do have other stuff going on is a great opportunity or vehicle rather for developing that trust and connection, right? Especially for folks who are seeking friends with other like femme or female or like women, people who are affected by misogyny. It can feel scary to set boundaries. And so being aware that that's happening is sometimes a really useful thing to bring into the room. Sometimes folks will not want to outright say, I'm tired and I don't want to hang out with anybody, or like, I don't really have social battery left, right? And so oftentimes folks will hide behind the like, oh, I'm busy kind of excuse. Building in this out into your invitations to things can take the pressure off of this environment. And first of all, again, is helping us to decrease this feeling of like desperation or fervence or like urgency. But it also creates a feeling of trust, right? That like over time, obviously, the goal is that we can be honest with our friends and saying like, no, I don't have any social battery left, so I'm sitting at home. But in those initial phases, it's going to feel awkward to do that. And so building in this out is a great opportunity for you to kind of communicate that like, you don't necessarily owe me an explanation about what you're doing with your time. I just want to connect with you, so I'm offering you this thing, right? If it doesn't work, it's fine. Well, again, I'll catch you on the next time. So practice incorporating that into your communication. I have a sneaking suspicion that you'll probably find more success communicating it that way versus like the other way, which to a lot of folks can feel kind of like an interrogation rather than an invitation. The last tip that I have for you is to avoid too much surface level stuff, especially if you are an extroverted person. This can be the tendency where we talk about more surface level, like objective goings on about like the weather or recent events or sports or whatever. And those types of conversations can oftentimes be a little bit of a dead end in terms of making new friends. Ideally, when we're talking about building like an actual intimate connection with someone, essentially, we want to be able to talk about our real ass lives and our real ass feelings. There's kind of like a gradual stair stepping that we do with increasing the level of intimacy we have in a relationship, where at the very, very top, we're talking about objective things, right? How's the weather today? Did you see this like news article that came out, right? And with the increasing intimacy that we develop, we are talking about our opinions on those things, our thoughts and feelings about those things, to then gradually developing a level of trust where we're able to talk about, our intrinsic beliefs about life in the world, our deepest feelings, or potentially our traumas or fears, or, et cetera, right? I want to encourage people to be mindful of this, like, ideally funnel situation. Also, to not be doing this too quickly. We don't want to be doing the thing where we're forming friends based solely on sharing our trauma histories, because that can be a whole other issue, right? But keeping ourselves in this very surface level place is oftentimes where people feel like, I have a bunch of fucking acquaintances, but not any real ass friends. And this is why I said in the first video to explore what it looks like to potentially deepen those relationships. Because if we're doing the surface level thing, it's going to keep us stuck. For what it's worth, if you find yourself having a hard time moving past those surface level things, the advice that I commonly give folks is that if you want to be interesting, be interested. Asking questions is like the number one way that we can continue a conversation. Asking folks about, their opinion on an objective thing can help to move us down that funnel in terms of like developing more intimacy and connection and like shared experiences, right? It's also important to remember that people's favorite subject is often themselves. This is not selfish or self-centered. It's just that we like talking about ourselves, and we really like being in community with people who seem to have a genuine interest in us. So if you're seeming to come up against a barrier here, practice being interested. Oftentimes this will go a long way in helping to, again, deepen that conversation. And ideally, if you're in contact or communication with somebody who is going to be a good friend for you, somebody who has a good grasp on like reciprocity in relationships, they will then do the same thing and ask you questions about yourself, which is where we get this great back and forth that's happening, where we're learning about each other, we're developing commonalities, and we are developing this shared intimacy. So I hope that these are helpful to you. I know that there is a lot of fear and uncertainty, anxiety that comes up for folks in this regard. And again, I just want to be super clear. This is very human. That's very okay. And also challenging that, moving through that with a sense of compassion and respect for ourselves, first of all, is the ultimate flex. But second of all, is the best way that we can continue to develop friendships and community and to continue to feel seen and heard and valued by the folks in our lives. So again, I said this in the last video, but I'm going to say it again. Big love to you if you're embarking on this journey, because it can feel scary, but you can do it. I believe in you. And again, especially like this is a thing that everybody is doing all the time. I can assure you that this is a lot more common than you probably think it is. So if you like the video, if you found it useful, like the video and subscribe to the channel. It does really help support the work that we're doing here on the channel. And then share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow. And I will see you guys next Saturday. Okay, bye.